Hello, welcome to another episode of the Menswear Style Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Brooker. Today, I am talking to founder and CEO of HOOHAA, Lorenzo Vasini. HOOHAA is a new platform helping consumers seek out and enjoy niche fragrances that may ordinarily be left undiscovered. The mainstream fragrance market is noisy and crowded, but there is a huge amount of independent fragrance producers who have previously found it near impossible to cut through with consumers. With beauty hails feeling like a distant memory and virtual beauty discovery at its peak in consumer interest, now is the time to champion, support and experiment with responsible, sustainable and unique fragrances with monthly delivery service. HOOHAA. Okay, so here to talk about HOOHAA in his own words is Lorenzo Vasini.
First, thanks for having me on. It's a really exciting opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Lorenzo. I am, I guess you probably class me as an entrepreneur now, CEO and founder at HOOHAA. So HOOHAA is, in its functional description, it's a fragrance subscription service, right? So that's kind of how you would class it. What does that really mean? I'd say, if I was telling my friends, I'd say, look, I describe it as it is, which is, it's a discovery service that really helps you find new and exciting fragrances that you probably never usually find from smaller batch brands that have probably got a lesser impact on the world. And that also means that you can discover these fragrances in the comfort of your own home across a longer period of time, meaning you never have to go into another fragrance hall again in your life if you don't want to. So it's kind of,
heaven.
It's a bit of a game changer, we think, because, there's so many things that just we don't think are nice about fragrance, and we're kind of trying to package it in a way that is just a bit more accessible and fun.
And it is fun because I went on the website and had a look through the bio and enjoyed the opening line of, well, you can have citrus notes, sandalwood, and unicorn farts all wrapped into one with this. And I thought, and when I guffawed out laugh, the cat jumped off my lap, and I thought, I'm in. It's my kind of brand. So maybe touch upon the idea of the branding and your approach to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think both my business partner and I, Ryan and I, we're both relatively kind of I guess slightly irreverent people in some areas of life. Some of that comes through more, some doesn't. But I think for us, it was when we started HOOHAA, it was actually a part of a journey into fragrance that we'd made about 18 months prior. So we started by setting up our own fragrance brand called Vaunt, which was 3 unisex fragrances, right? And actually what we found on that journey, and we can always go back there in a minute, was that we discovered this world of fragrance. We were both fragrance fanatics anyway. But what we found was the world of fragrance was just full of rubbish, full of marketing shizzle, full of stuff that actually for us is just so hideously outdated and irrelevant in a world where people are just wanting to be communicated with on a more of a level, right? So I guess if you visualize that, it's like I'm not sure David Gandy in white pants is really the way that people want to be marketed about fragrance anymore, right? I mean, hell, if I looked that good in white pants, I'd probably wear them, but I don't think people are quite connecting with that kind of advertising and marketing anymore. So I think people are smarter than brands are giving them credit for. And I think there's a bit of that. There's also the reality that there's a lot of opacity and secrecy and guarded kind of things in fragrance that, again, we just don't think is relevant in a world where, people want transparency, they want openness, they want stewardship, they want a lot of things in their brands that a lot of these fragrance companies just kind of can't do or won't do, right?
Right, yeah.
What was behind it was wanting to create a much more, I guess, some way to democratize the high-end element of an industry that has been so secret, and most people can't access it because most of the distribution is always geared towards the same brands. The deck is stacked in favor of big brands in fragrance, basically, right? Because most retailers don't want to take the risk on a new brand because, if you could stock D&G Light Blue over a niche fragrance brand, you'll go with D&G Light Blue because it's probably going to sell.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. We wanted to take a gamble and help some new players be introduced to people and make people's lives.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I never really thought about it before. But there is so much pretension when it comes to aftershave brands in total. And I say I've never thought about it before. I do actually say to my girlfriend, each time I see some kind of perfume ad, it's so nebulous and artsy for the sake of art. Like you'll have some like Chris Pine walking out onto a balcony and then doing up a button on his shirt, and then you're like polo for men. I'm like, what the hell is this? Who gives a crap about that?
Is it the new Burberry one? You've got Adam, is it Adam Brody, naked on horseback / right on the beach? I'm like, I mean, that's not going to make me buy that. It's just not.
So what are they trying? I mean, I don't want to drill down too heavily on other brands, but I'm just trying to get your take on what their thinking might be for this. Is it because let's make this as aspirational as possible? That way we can get away with this price tag that we're going to attach to it. Do you think there's some of that?
You know what? I think it's a great question. I think, if you think about the kind of the marketing or the playbook for a brand when they're going to create a fragrance, right? You've got label wants to create fragrance. Okay. Label, D&G, whoever, Burberry, goes to fragrance producer, right? And there are 4 or 5 big ones in the world. There's Givaudan, Firmenich, Coty, IFF. And essentially between them, they make almost every fragrance that you see on the shelf in any big department store, right? There are others, but they control it. So essentially, big brand goes, I want something that smells sweet, caramelly, and the customer's going to be this kind of person. Great. And then we'll put 20 million behind it to make a big ad campaign.
Right.
And if it really works, we'll have one version of it, and then we'll create 3 or 4 that are what are called flankers.
Yeah.
Which, if you fall in love with the first one, then there's a good chance you're going to buy the second and the third and the fourth one. So it means they can keep you buying their brand. And that, frankly, is what big fragrance is about. Right.
And that's been that way for, 20 years, do you think?
Oh, more. I mean, since fragrance has started, right? And look, what we say, we're not saying that the fragrance is bad or any of that. But what we are saying is the way that it's currently architected as an industry does not give these up-and-coming, new, independent, smaller batch people a good platform to launch their products, because if you don't have millions of pounds, it's quite hard to cut through.
Yeah.
Right? So where, if you look at, the beauty industry and the wellness industry, direct-to-consumer brands have thrived there because actually digital is a great medium for it, because you can show what makeup does, you can show what skincare does, you can show what a lot of that does. Whereas with fragrance, you've got to smell it. Yeah. You've just got to smell it. There's no substitute for it. You can reorder online, but it's very difficult to discover something new, because even if somebody writes something amazing about it, it's still like, it's a gamble. What if I don't like it?
Yeah. And it's interesting as well. I want to draw parallels to like craft beer subscription service, where you'll get something delivered and it will be something unique that you'll maybe introduce to a party of 5 or 6 coming around for poker games, you know what I mean? And then you've got that to champion, and this is yours, and all of a sudden you're quite different by osmosis because you're introducing new things.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like transmitting that to your brand and your business? Are you kind of wanting people to be the first to have something new that they wouldn't necessarily have been introduced to previously?
100%. It's there really is a big element of that, and I think when we look at the reviews that we have from our service and our customers, something that shines through time and time again is it's just great that people mention my scent. They haven't commented on what I've worn for years, and I feel so confident in what I'm wearing, and I don't smell like everybody else. And actually, I think that's a really great thing to kind of introduce people to, right? And you're right. That if you like, the niche part of the industry is a little bit like the craft beer, and let's say that the kind of coffee movement that started
Yeah.
in that these things. But I think what happened in, let's say, the craft beer industry is there were some craft beers made, and then consumers demonstrated that they wanted it. Some more was made, and it kind of went like this. What's happening in fragrance is lots of it's been made, but the consumers haven't been able to say, oh, this is great, because it's not available, because the distribution points aren't as, like I said, they're not as forgiving and as open to these new brands.
Right.
So I think that's where things have kind of stalled a bit. But the reality is, right, when you look at kind of where the market is working and where it's not, the sales of kind of mass fragrances going like that, to all of your kind of designer fragrances, Ariana Grande, and all these kind of celebrity stuff, they're just not working like they used to.
Right.
And what's happening is the higher end of fragrance and the more niche brands are starting to grow. And it kind of, you know, I hear it from lots of different brands. People don't want to smell like everybody else again.
Right.
Anymore.
Yeah.
They, you know, people, I don't know. I think people are just a bit sick of being, I don't know. And also, why would you want to wear the same fragrance for 10 or 15 years? It's like, you don't wear the same pair of jeans, do you?
So I've got a theory on that. I think it's just generally guys are a little bit thick. If you give guys the option of one brand that they had from the age of 16, they'll go, right, well, I know what Nike fits like, so I'll just wear Nike for the rest of my life, and then I've squared that box. You know, if you just go, well, I'll just have macaroni and cheese because I know what that tastes like. I don't want to risk anything else on the menu because I don't know what it's like. But then, I don't know. Well, that's a bit of a generalization, but I think guys are typically quite loyal to brands, and I don't think that's anything new. How do you get to vet the brands and the perfumes under your umbrella?
Yeah. Do you know what? That's actually one of the best parts of running a business like ours, right? Because, you know, we're all very, very interested in the category, right? We love discovering new fragrances ourselves, so we're perfect customers for our brand, right? So for us, when these brands, when we started out, it was a case of, you know, we had our own collections. We knew the brands that we would love to kind of stock, and we went out to speak to them. Said, this is what we're going to do. Lots of them were like, no, guys, no, I don't think so. And there was a handful that said, yes, we're going to back you. And we built on that. But what happens now is, you know, we're a curated service, right now, which means, as you say, lots of brands are sending us samples in, and we have to evaluate those fragrances to make sure that not only is it a brand that kind of fits our philosophy, which is, you know, we're looking for more independent, smaller batch producers that have got a
underdogs,
history, they've got a story. Yeah, the people that are coming up through, right? You know, I don't know whether you know, let's just drop brands like Le Labo or Byredo. You know, we wouldn't work with them because they're too big for us. They don't need us. But what we want to do is help nurture and bring through the next one. Right? That would be success for us, creating one that went on to be, you know, to kind of hit the big time. But for us, it's about, you know, fragrances that are complete, that they tell a whole story, that you can tell that it's not, you know, they're not rushed, that they're great work, and that they have a story behind them that's authentic and that is coherent. Because I think what you do also find is there are a lot of fragrances being made, and some of them aren't fantastic, some of them aren't great, some of them are okay. So what we have to do is make sure that at least in our subscriptions we're featuring ones that we think are going to tick the boxes that our customers want. And that doesn't always mean it has to be a blockbuster or a kind of one that's going to fill the room. It just means one that it's going to fit what we feel that particular edit, as we call them, is going to do. But you know, we have a wonderful lady, Brooke, who is our head of curation, and essentially her job is to smell fragrances majority of the day, evaluate, take notes, and you know, between us, we kind of decide which ones we're going to feature, and it's such a fantastic job to do that.
What are the cool things, not cool, what are the right things to say when you smell a fragrance but you can't quite place it? So I see a lot of vloggers online, and when they do those tasters and testers, I can see that panic in their eyes because they don't quite know what to say. Normally they go, well, that's very fresh, and I'm like, oh, come on,
you do better than that.
You can't call it fresh. Everything's fresh. I don't know, maybe help me out because I don't have the best nose, but I want to get some phraseology down where I know at least I know what I'm talking about, or look like I do.
Okay. Well, I think so for you then probably a good thing to do would be to Google the fragrance wheel, right? So have a look at the fragrance wheel. And essentially what that will give you is the core fragrance families, right? Now there are, let me just, I'm going to make sure I get this right because sometimes I miss a couple. Let's get this right. Hold on. I
like the sound of this because you've got color wheels and you can always tie in things with other groupings. So I like this.
Exactly. But so we've got, so there are, okay. So you've got florals, you've got fruities, you've got gourmand.
Gourmand, what's that?
Gourmand. So the gourmand category of fragrances that kind of smell like food or drink or something you want to eat. Right? So it's a gourmand category. So they're usually, they might smell of coffee or
chocolate,
nuts or chocolate or brandy or something like that. They tend to be kind of classed as a gourmand category.
Right.
Then you've got herbals, you've got spicy, you've got woods. Woods. The woody ones tend to be the most popular, right? Citrus, of course. Citrus is probably the best category for summer. But there's some really interesting thing about citrus. What you tend to read on reviews of any fragrances that are citrusy is, I've just spent £100 on a citrus fragrance. It only lasts 2 hours. This is disgraceful. It's like citrus doesn't last, right? If citrus fruit is what it's basically made from, and those ingredients just don't last. So the only way you can make a citrus fragrance last longer is to put things that are heavier on the base, and that's what you will smell later. But you won't be able to smell the lemons and the limes and the bergamot later on because they just disappear. So there's a bit of education as well in there, right? Then you've got clean fragrances, so it might be something that smells a bit of laundry or ozone-y or breezy, these kind of smells. But I think floral is one of the interesting categories, right? Because as guys, we traditionally kind of probably shied away from florals, right? We're told florals are for women, and we should be with woods and leather and patchouli and all of that. But I mean, we've featured some incredible floral fragrances this year, and guys on our subscription are basically just going, I had no idea that I could wear a floral, and this thing is just insane. And it's been really interesting. I mean, who was it? Hang on a minute. So I'm just trying to think of the guy. Hang on a minute. I've just got to tell you a little story. Basically, he conquered Europe wearing violets.
Oh, okay.
What was it? God, I can't remember the guy's name. Napoleon. So Napoleon essentially used to wear violet every day. Now, and this is what I say to guys that say, I can't wear flowers. It's like, guys, come on. If a guy can basically dominate Europe,
you want to conquer the world,
I'm sure you can manage it, right? It's not a big deal. You can cope with it. So
I'm only 5'5", so I'll seek out them violets as well. So it's not exclusively for short people that want to conquer the world that have got daddy issues.
Exactly.
But you won't be too cut out from it. So okay, great. I like it. So if someone asks me, what are you getting? I can be like, I'm getting notes of gourmand, but then there's a push of violet somewhere. It's a bit like when when people taste wine and someone goes, getting forest floor. I'm like, that's good. You know your onions. When someone tastes whiskey and says I'm getting vanilla notes, I know they're talking shit. Because everything's got vanilla notes.
Definitely. But it's a very interesting world once you get going. I had a visit to Grasse about 3-4 years ago and spent time in one of the museums there, and they do a proper kind of they take you into the note center and they kind of say, right, smell this, and it's just such an experience.
How does the subscription service work, please? Maybe you can just walk me through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things for us was about trying to make it as simple as we could for people, because we're aware that there's a few things that we're doing that are a bit of a leap of faith for people, right? We're doing niche fragrance. Not everybody knows what that is. We're doing a subscription service. That's still, even though we know that they're, most people are subscribed to, multiples these days, it's still, okay, so fragrance by subscription. So what we wanted to do is go, okay, well, let's not put too much more mental load on people. So we've kind of made it, right, yes, we're fragrance by subscription. They're not fragrances that you're going to find in a department store. And we've essentially curated 3 edits, right? 3 paths, if you like. One is called Easy Does It. And, the scents in there they're all high quality, they're all eau de parfum, but they're going to be easier to get your head around. They're going to be easy to kind of associate with and understand, right? Then the next one up is Buckle Up. And that's kind of, all right, well, perhaps this is not your first rodeo, maybe you've got
you know a thing or two, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you've got a bottle of, I don't know, Frederick Mal or Byredo or something in the cupboard, or Le Labo, and you're thinking, okay, well, yeah, I've moved off D and G. I'm going to move up here as well. And then the other one is, the out there one is Take Me to Mars. Ooh. And, the fragrances that we put in there deliberately are there to challenge people, because people that sign up to that edit, they want to be challenged. They want their olfactory kind of senses to be challenged. And my God, we have done that. I mean, we've sent fragrances out there that people have gone, oh my God, this is just the most bizarre thing I've ever smelled in my life. And that's why we create that edit, for that very, very thing. So essentially what people do is they sign up for one of those, and you get one 10 ml bottle, travel size bottle, comes through your door every month. If you're starting to feel that, the path you're on isn't delivering you the best fragrances every month, you can shift to one of the other ones. We're always, you can always look on the website and see what fragrance is shipping that month. So you can read about it, and you can go, all right, well, I know my fragrances is going to ship on the 15th of the month. I don't like the sound of that one, but I love the sound of that one. You can move. So that's what's happening. That's the model at the moment. People can sign up on a kind of a recurring, right, subscription, or they can prepay. They can buy a 3 or a 6 or a 12 month with a bit of a discount. So,
right, okay.
And they can gift it. That's been quite interesting at Christmas. Loads of people were buying 3 or 6 or 12 month subscriptions as gifts. Yeah, it's a really nice gift, because every month you're reminded of the person that bought you this gift. How nice, right?
Exactly, yeah. And you just got to make sure that they don't move.
Yes.
And forget all about those gifts that you're now giving a complete stranger. But you're right, I did do that for my brother. I think it was like a magazine or something, and at the start of each month he would text me and go, I've got it, and I'm like, who's this again? Oh yeah, that's right, because we normally only talk at Christmas. Now we can talk every month. But yeah, love it. Lorenzo, I was just going to ask you about the branding as well, because I thought the branding was really cool. I don't quite know what to call it, or how to coin it, perhaps is the best way. Perhaps you can help me.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked, because I think it's something that Ryan and I spent so much time getting right, because look, anyone can knock up a e-commerce site with Squarespace or Shopify. You haven't got to be smart to create a website anymore. You don't need design skills, you don't need branding skills, really. But we felt if we're going to launch this project, and we've got a hope of cutting through, particularly with the makers, right, we've got to create something that really does stand out from other offerings. So that was what we really felt we had to do, because even though we want to remove a lot of the kind of, the complexity and the pomp, we've still got to represent very luxury products. So we had to create something that had a feeling of premium, right? Which hopefully we've managed to do. So they were the kind of things that we still knew we needed to do. We wanted to create a brand that was unisex because, even though 68, 70% of our customers are women, we believe that fragrance is for all. And most of our fragrances are unisex fragrances. We select them specifically to be unisex because, again, there's a huge group of people out there now that really don't care about this one's for men, this one's for women, this one's... So the brand had to speak to both sexes, all sexes, in a way that kind of wasn't alienating anybody.
Right.
And we also wanted it to be really cool. We wanted it to be a little bit different. So I think, what style would I call it? I mean, some people have said it's quite sort of pop arty. It's got a sort of Bauhaus.
I was going to say Bauhaus, but because I know nothing about art, I was wondering, am I just talking out my...
No, that's...
I was going to say
that's
Bauhaus.
definitely... it's got a Bauhaus kind of feel to it. And I think it seems to be working, right?
Mate, again, I don't want to blow too much smoke up your ass, but I think it's really one of the main lures for me on the website was just how cool it looked and how it was very easy to navigate around. But you're right, it didn't have that cookie cutter feel that websites have these days, because anyone, even just like me, can make a Shopify website or whatnot. So it does look like it's something that's been you've taken care of it, and you've also wanted to make it look like a club that you want to belong to, if that makes sense. So,
thanks for saying that.
I'm
it's
sold.
Nice to hear that. Oh, good. Yeah, it's and that, when you're trying to encourage pretty niche, high end luxury brands that are very particular about where they want to be stocked. You have to have something that's a little bit different. And it's funny, we were talking to a new brand, I think this week, and I always ask, why did you pick us? Why ask not blah or blah? And they said because you're doing something different, and your brand is cool, and you seem to stand for something, and we love how you're representing the brands, and we love how you're representing fragrance, and actually you're doing it in a way that no one else is. I'm like, thank you. Can you be on our website as like a video testimonial, please?
Just say all that again, but into the camera phone. Love it. Well, mate, I think you're doing the Lord's work over there. What are maybe give our listeners an idea of the prices, so they know what they're in for.
Yeah. So if anybody looks around, we generally give people, right now there's a 30% off your first month, right? So, standard is £14.95. Most people pay, I think it's like £10.46 for their first month, and then it reverts back to £14.95 per month, right? But if we think about context here, right, the cheapest of our fragrances is £65 for 30 ml. Right. So, most people are used to getting a 100 ml bottle of perfume fragrance, and they're probably going to pay anything from 40 up to maybe 80 quid, maybe 100 quid for it, right? So if you think about the price per ml that we're giving people is incredible value. It's like to go and sample some of our fragrances that retail at 180, 190 euros for 50 ml. You just, you'd be lucky to find them. B, when you went into the store and said, can I have a 10 ml sample for £15? So probably frog marched you out the door there. Right. So, there's this real value, actually, part of what we're doing for consumers that sometimes I don't think people quite get their head around. They're like, 15 quid for 10 ml of fragrance. Mm-hmm. And then when we start to go, well, actually, we're talking normally fragrance is maybe £8 per 10. Our stuff can range up to 50 quid for 10 ml of fragrance.
And also you've got a library or a wardrobe now of scents that you kind of build up, rather than going out and saying, well, I need to have, like, say, 10 scents to get me through the year, and then I'll have to spend X amount to get those bottles in, taking up crap loads of real estate in the bathroom, which no guy has, I know. So I'm guessing there's that allure as well, is that you're going to have a lot of variety, and you're also going to kind of minimize the space so that's all going to live and exist in, right?
Totally. And there is absolutely this notion of a fragrance wardrobe. I'm glad you said it, and I didn't have to kind of use it again. But I think it's, I mean, I literally, as you'd expect, I've probably got 100 fragrances that I can dig into on a daily basis, which sometimes paralyzes me in the morning. But generally, it's great. And as soon as people have more than 2 or 3 fragrances, that's another thing that they'll say. They're like, this is amazing having different fragrances to reach for different occasions and different feelings. And for us, that's just a normal way of life. But for most people, it's kind of not. And actually, it should be, because, like we said in the beginning, you don't wear the same item of clothing to go to the office as you do to play football or whatever. So, kind of fragrance is in the same category, right? It's a very personal thing, but it's also something that other people get to smell. Yeah. So, you've got to be a bit mindful about that. And a lot of people aren't.
I know. I mean, and people get pigeonholed by what they smell like. It's like, especially if you're working in a very closed environment with other people. And if you don't have a great expanse in your fragrance wardrobe, people can go, well, I know exactly what this guy is about. It's not maybe a bad fragrance, but you're not really keeping people on their toes, are you? In terms of
no. And it's also, it's being contextually aware about your fragrance as well, right? Some people want to go into a room and they want the fragrance to enter maybe a minute before them, and they want it to stick around half an hour, an hour after. And okay, that's fine. But actually, for a lot of people, that's a bit much. You don't want to be that woman or that guy that everyone's like, oh God.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Or if they're like, whoa, at least they're like, whoa, not whoa. So I think there's, if you're going to fill a room with a scent, make damn sure it's a good one, and people want you to walk back in again, not never come back in because you kind of, you've left a scent trail that is not as nice as it could be. So,
I just had a thought. So the people in the offices right now have all that kind of multiplex now because of COVID, right? And at some point, people were going to go, well, we can probably dispense with that. Well, apart from the guy that just has the horrible scent in the office, well, we can keep him. Yeah, we'll keep him cocooned. He's got no say in this. Don't give him the memo. It will just be him in a bit of Persiplex. It'll be like Silver in Skyfall when he gets caught. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Lorenzo, I could speak to you for hours. I appreciate you've got a life to get on with. HOOHAA, the place to go, hoohaa.co.uk, spelt like it sounds really. But we'll leave all the links over on the show notes at menswearstyle.co.uk. And great fun. Thanks for all the info and keep it going.
Thanks, Pete. It's been really brilliant talking to you. And one day I'm going to get a microphone like that. I'm so envious. I'm going to be a professional one day.
It's not that professional. I'm clutching it between my knees, and as I just tilted back, everything fell like a house of cards. But that's okay. I'll edit that out in post. No one will hear that. All right, mate. Great talking to you.
All right,
really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Menswear Style podcast. Be sure to head over to menswearstyle.co.uk for more menswear content, and email info@menswearstyle.co.uk if you would like to be a future guest on the show. Finally, please help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Until next time.